On a bleak November day in Chicago, the desolate landscape mirrored the emptiness I felt inside. Burnt debris and scattered trash danced in the chilling wind, reflecting the desolation of my own existence. As I stood amidst the ruins, contemplating what remained of my life, I couldn't shake the sense of loneliness and failure that engulfed me. My encounter with Olivia at a charity fundraiser breathed new life into my dreary routine. Assigned by my uncle to represent our family business, I found myself surrounded by pompous individuals whose shallow philanthropy paled in comparison to their self-importance. But Olivia's arrival transformed the evening. With her effortless charm and radiant smile, she bridged the gap, making conversation flow as if we were old friends. Unlike my competitive nature in professional and athletic spheres, social interactions had always been a challenge for me. Immersed in my career and plagued by shyness, I rarely pursued romantic connections. Yet, Olivia's allure was irresistible, and I found myself stepping out of my comfort zone to ask her out. Our dinner date surpassed expectations, revealing shared interests and sparking a mutual infatuation. As our relationship blossomed over the following months, I navigated the unfamiliar territory of romance with trepidation. Unsure of how to advance our connection without risking rejection, I hesitated to escalate our intimacy. But Olivia, unapologetically bold, took matters into her own hands one evening, leading me into her home with an undeniable passion. In her embrace, I discovered a depth of desire and pleasure I had never known. Olivia shattered my preconceptions of lust as solely a male domain, igniting a fire within me that left me utterly spent yet profoundly fulfilled. It was a transformative experience, eclipsing any previous joy in my life. As our bond deepened, intimacy became a natural part of our routine. Within months, we took the leap to living together, and a little over a year later, we exchanged vows. Settling into a cozy four-bedroom house in a serene neighborhood, we embraced the joys of domestic life, complete with landscaping projects and the addition of a furry companion. Marriage agreed with me in ways I hadn't anticipated. It ended the lingering sense of solitude I had grown accustomed to, offering unwavering emotional support and fulfilling physical intimacy. Having someone to love, and who loved me in return, surpassed my expectations. Of course, no union is without its challenges. Balancing the demands of work often left me stretched thin, frustrating Olivia at times with my limited availability. And like any couple, we had our quirks that occasionally grated on each other's nerves. For me, one of the biggest adjustments was the increased socialization with Olivia's family, particularly her parents. While her family was perfectly pleasant, I found myself occasionally bristling under their well-meaning advice and subtle pressure to start a family of our own. Her younger sister Mindy and her husband added another layer of complexity. Mindy's close relationship with Olivia sometimes left me feeling sidelined, especially when it seemed their bond overshadowed our own connection. Mindy's husband, Bruce, presented his own set of challenges. Despite his amiable demeanor, I couldn't shake the feeling that his business boasts were a facade. Listening to him wax poetic about his struggling furniture store tested my patience, but I chose to keep the peace for Olivia's sake, nodding along to his monologues to avoid stirring up trouble within her family. About 2 years into our marriage, Olivia broached the subject of assisting her sister Mindy and Mindy's husband, Bruce. It happened one evening over a romantic dinner, complete with candles and soft music, leading me to believe Olivia was angling for a passionate night together. However, as the conversation unfolded, it became evident that Olivia had other plans in mind. She spoke earnestly about our fortunate financial situation and her concern for Mindy and Bruce, who were facing some financial hardships. Bruce owed a substantial sum of money, and Olivia felt compelled to help them out. Sensing where this was heading, I cut to the chase. "How much do they need, Liv?" I asked, preempting her prepared spiel. Her response caught me off guard. Mindy and Bruce were seeking $50,000 to $60,000 to clear their debts. This was a significant amount, and while we were doing well financially, most of our assets were tied up, making such a withdrawal a substantial hit to our liquidity. I hesitated, contemplating the implications of such a large loan. Olivia reassured me, citing Bruce's promising ideas and their commitment to repay the loan promptly. Despite my reservations, I acquiesced, writing a check for the full amount. I made it clear to Olivia that this would require us to tighten our belts until the money was repaid. I recalled the advice about lending money to family and accepted that this might be more of a gift than a loan. While I harbored doubts about Bruce's ability to turn his business around, I wanted to appease Olivia and maintain harmony within her family. So, I reluctantly parted with $60,000, hoping it would strengthen my relationship with Olivia's family, even if it meant sacrificing a considerable sum. About 3 or 4 months after I had loaned Bruce the money, I found myself at home, searching high and low for a thumb drive containing crucial data. My absent-minded habit of misplacing important items led me on a thorough hunt throughout the house. After scouring all the usual spots, I ventured into the guest room, meticulously inspecting the desk and even peering under the bed. As I rose to my feet, I noticed an unusual lumpiness in the bed, far more disheveled than my recent search would warrant. It was evident that someone had slept there and hastily pulled up the covers. Initially, it didn't strike me as significant, but later that evening, I casually mentioned it to Olivia. "Hey, did someone sleep in the guest bed?" It seemed quite rumpled when I checked earlier. Olivia stumbled over her words, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. Yes, I took a nap in there earlier. I was cleaning and got so tired that I just crashed without tidying up." At that point in our marriage, I trusted Olivia implicitly, never doubting her sincerity. I found it amusing that she would be flustered over taking a midday nap. However, the rumpled bedspread was just one of many subtle clues I overlooked. Over the following year, odd occurrences began to accumulate, indicating that Olivia might not be as virtuous as I believed. I accepted without question her sudden need to attend lengthy, uninterrupted meetings every Tuesday as part of her job as an assistant manager at a bookstore. I dismissed the unexplained bruises on her body and overlooked lingerie in the laundry that I didn't recall her wearing. Then there was the matter of the orange juice. Olivia had started shopping at a new upscale grocery store, which inconvenienced me because they didn't stock my favorite brand. Despite my complaints, she insisted on continuing her shopping there, citing its convenience after her Tuesday meetings. While seemingly trivial, this detail sparked a realization that ultimately shattered my heart. Less than 18 months after the initial loan, Olivia began dropping hints that Bruce and Mindy might require additional funds. With Bruce having hardly repaid a fraction of the original sum, I was understandably hesitant to part with more money, particularly for what I perceived as an unsustainable venture. Hoping to discourage Olivia's persistence, I initially brushed off her suggestions. However, she persisted, expressing concerns that Mindy and Bruce could face business failure without further investment in upgrading their inventory. Reluctant to outright refuse and striving to maintain harmony, I eventually agreed to review Bruce's business plan and visit his store, secretly hoping to confirm my doubts about the investment. Meeting Bruce at his store on a Monday morning, I was greeted with his usual exuberance as he proudly showcased his plans and introduced me to his employees. He outlined his vision for the business, confidently asserting that additional funds for inventory improvements would quickly turn a profit. During our discussion in his office, I delicately conveyed my reservations, suggesting the need for cost-cutting and considering alternative career paths. However, Bruce remained steadfast in his belief that a facelift would suffice to reverse the business's fortunes. Reluctant to outright deny his request for funding, I explained the necessity of seeking approval from the trust, subtly shifting the responsibility to Bernie, our trust manager. While I knew Bernie would likely comply with my wishes, I preferred to portray him as the obstacle to avoid confrontation and mitigate my financial exposure. As I departed, Bruce's confidence in securing the loan left me feeling guilty for potentially disappointing him. Driving away from the store, I pondered the implications of my actions, grappling with feelings of cowardice and moral ambiguity. Lost in thought, I noticed something that initially seemed coincidental but gradually raised unsettling doubts in my mind. The sight of Salvador's grocery store triggered a memory. It wasn't like any store I'd seen before, painted green with a distinct sign out front. As I drove past, the name clicked. It was where Olivia had been shopping lately, claiming it was more convenient. But its location didn't align with her usual routes. The unsettling thought crossed my mind, was this where she spent her Tuesdays? After circling back, I parked near Bruce's furniture store, feeling a nagging suspicion. Confirming there was only one Salvador's in Chicago, my mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe Olivia had business nearby, or met Mindy for lunch. But the conclusion I resisted crept in. With a sudden urge for answers, I decided to confront Bruce. Storming into the store, I encountered an unhelpful employee on break, stirring his coffee with indifference. Ignoring my urgency, he brushed me off until I pressed harder. Realizing I was the man Bruce had been with earlier, the employee finally relented, offering me a seat in the break room while I waited for Bruce to finish with a supplier. The growing suspicion gnawed at me as I settled in, prepared to confront Bruce about my troubling discoveries. He guided me to the room at a relaxed pace before leaving me with a cup of coffee and the TV remote. With a hastily crafted plan in mind, I intended to confront Bruce forcefully and bluff about having solid evidence of his and Olivia's infidelity. I would threaten to expose them to Mindy and the rest of the family unless Bruce came clean immediately. If he was cheating with her, I expected him to crack right away. If not, I'd have to endure the embarrassment, perhaps passing it off as a joke. As I rehearsed my speech mentally, I absent-mindedly explored the room, flipping through magazines and TV channels. It dawned on me that if they were having an affair at the store, clues might be found in this break room, possibly on the worn-out couch I was staring at. Anger and apprehension swirled within me as I scrutinized the faded pea green couch with coffee stains and a tear in the fabric. Pulling up a cushion, I discovered a fold-out bed with rumpled sheets, bearing signs of use, like lipstick stains and a faint perfume scent. Curiosity piqued, I investigated further, reaching into the space under the bed and retrieving various items: a pen, loose change, a crushed coffee cup, an empty tube of KY jelly, and a restaurant receipt. The receipt, bearing Olivia's signature, was from a Mexican restaurant where she often lunched. Though seemingly circumstantial, finding it clarified my suspicions. It connected the dots between her peculiar Tuesday schedules, bruises, lingerie usage, and the disheveled bed, painting a damning picture of infidelity. Realizing that intimidating Bruce might jeopardize gathering conclusive evidence, I abandoned my plan. Instead, armed with the likely time and place of their affair, I resolved to gather indisputable proof to confirm my suspicions. I folded the bed back and sank onto the couch, consumed by a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and frustration. I'd faced setbacks in business and even been cheated before, but nothing compared to this level of betrayal. The urge to unleash a torrent of emotions, to shout, cry, and punch a wall simultaneously, threatened to overwhelm me. Yet, amidst the chaos, one desire burned brighter than the rest: the need for retribution. As I gradually regained composure, I adopted a more calculated approach, seeking to exploit Bruce and my wife's vulnerabilities to satisfy my wounded pride once I had undeniable evidence of their deceit. Initially, thoughts of confronting Bruce violently crossed my mind, but I swiftly dismissed them. Jail time wouldn't serve me well. Then, the idea of demanding immediate repayment of my outstanding money surfaced, but Bernie's warning about indebtedness to untrustworthy parties echoed in my mind. I wanted leverage over Bruce. Glancing toward Bruce's office, I observed him concluding a discussion with a supplier before hastening back to the break room. Seizing the opportunity, I greeted him with a smile. "Hey, Bruce, I've had some time to rethink things since our earlier conversation. I hope you understand I only raised those questions out of concern. I genuinely believe in your business acumen and see potential in this store." Bruce's grin widened as I continued. "I'm committed to securing the funds for you. It's not just an investment, it's support for family. I'm confident I can persuade Bernie to release the funds from the trust." Bruce's enthusiasm mirrored my own. "That's fantastic news, Mike. This business is primed for success, and your backing will ensure it." I nodded, concealing my true intentions behind a facade of reassurance. "Bernie will draft an agreement to protect the trust's interests, but I'll expedite the process. Expect the funds within a week, pending your approval." Bruce's elation was palpable. "I appreciate your trust in me, Mike. This loan will be a game-changer for us." With a sense of grim satisfaction, I left the break room, concealing my burning desire for vengeance beneath a veneer of false camaraderie. The following morning, I entered Bernie's office and sank into a chair, closing the door behind me. Bernie gestured that he'd be available shortly, finishing up a phone call and jotting down notes. Sensing my restlessness, he arched an eyebrow inquisitively once he hung up. "What's on your mind this morning, Mike? You seem a bit on edge." I cleared my throat, leaning forward to speak. Bernie, I'm considering tapping into the trust for a substantial loan. Bernie nodded, pulling up a spreadsheet on his computer to assess the trust's assets. Well, that shouldn't pose an issue. How much are we talking about? Before delving into specifics, I emphasized the need for absolute confidentiality. Bernie, it's imperative that this remains strictly between us. I don't want anyone else, not even Seth or anyone in the family, to be privy to the details of this transaction. He shifted in his seat, his expression reflecting a hint of concern. Is there any legal concern here? Not at all. I want this to be meticulously legal, I assured him. Bernie raised an eyebrow, sensing my intention. Are you expecting a default? Is this about trapping someone? I met his gaze squarely. Yes, it's about trapping my brother-in-law, Bruce. And it involves Olivia. Bernie's reaction was a mix of surprise and uncertainty, struggling to find his words. After a sip of water, he managed to respond. Are you certain about this? Absolutely, I affirmed firmly. Within a week, the loan agreement was finalized, and I personally delivered it to Bruce for his review and signature. His lawyer, Tim Sowers, also his cousin, joined us to discuss the document. All right, began Sowers, I've gone through this, and it's standard for a business loan. But there are a few points I want to address before you sign, Bruce. Bruce, with his characteristic grin, nodded eagerly. Sure, lay it on me, Tim. Sowers cleared his throat, casting a discerning glance at Bruce, his demeanor tinged with a hint of disdain, as if he understood Bruce's limited grasp of business operations. All right, let's go over the details. This loan amounts to $425,000 to be repaid over a span of 7 years. The repayment schedule begins immediately, with monthly installments slightly exceeding $6,000. Bruce bobbed his head in agreement. Now, the actual disbursed amount will be $365,000 as we're consolidating it with your previous loan. Mike will be reimbursed his $60,000, leaving the remainder for you. Understand? Capice, Bruce replied smugly, affecting a slight Italian accent. Tim glanced at him again, emitting a soft sigh. Moving on. This loan is secured with collateral, tied to your business and a property near Keokuk. Is that the duck hunting land? Yeah, Bruce responded, gesturing to Bernie as he addressed Sowers. They want to ensure Mike's trust is safeguarded in case of any business downturns. But, he hurriedly interjected, that's unlikely. The business is thriving. Bernie Black agrees, as does Mike. He nodded to me, flashing a grin. Isn't that right, Mike? Absolutely, I replied with feigned enthusiasm. Bruce has shown me the figures, and I'm confident in his venture. I grinned. But you see, Bernie is extremely cautious. He insists on protecting the trust in worst-case scenarios. Sowers frowned, scrutinizing Bruce. Are you aware that defaulting could result in losing the business or even the hunting land, which has been in the family for generations? Of course, Bruce responded earnestly, attempting to convey his seriousness to Sowers. I understand the stakes. But truly, I have full confidence in the business. It's far safer to secure this loan than to operate without it. And you understand that penalties kick in with just 3 months of missed payments? Sure, got it, Bruce said, shooting me a knowing smile, as if we shared a secret understanding that Bernie wouldn't enforce penalties unless absolutely necessary. I returned the smile. At home, Olivia was ecstatic. She raved about how Bruce's business would thrive with the infusion of funds. Somehow, I managed to restrain myself from blurting out what I truly believed, that the main obstacle to Bruce's success was Bruce himself, and no amount of money could remedy that. Over the next few weeks, maintaining a facade of indifference toward Bruce's business endeavors became one of the simpler tasks I faced when dealing with Olivia. Ending my marriage the way I desired would require gathering more information, which meant exercising control over my emotions, a daily struggle that oscillated between melancholy, rage, and disgust at her affair. Sitting down to dinner with her without erupting became a feat, and intimacy became something to avoid altogether, whenever possible. When there was no escape, I found myself relying on memories of a sordid encounter from years past. At 18, during a spring break trip to San Diego, my friends and I found ourselves in Tijuana, indulging in some escapades to blow off steam. We imbibed and watched explicit and frankly repulsive sex shows before ending up with prostitutes. I found myself paired with a woman in her early 30s, withered by life's hardships. She wasn't particularly attractive, though my judgment was clouded by alcohol. Despite my reservations, peer pressure pushed me into a dingy, run-down room above the bar to engage in the act. To get through it, I had to detach myself mentally, treating her merely as a means to an end. I used her impersonally, drowning out the noise and the squalor around us. During those weeks with Olivia, those encounters replayed in my mind. I closed my eyes, metaphorically holding my nose, and engaged with her mechanically, recalling that distant encounter. It became a primal act devoid of tenderness or connection, akin to a bodily function. Once I started, it was almost too easy to lose myself in the intensity, verging on brutality. It might have seemed like a violation if Olivia hadn't reciprocated with equal fervor. Unsurprisingly, Olivia noticed the change and voiced her dissatisfaction, expressing a desire for gentler, more romantic intimacy. Yet, on the whole, she seemed content with the newfound intensity, viewing it as an improvement over our previous encounters. In another context, she might have thrived as an attraction for American tourists in Tijuana. Obtaining undeniable evidence of the affair unfolded as expected. Bruce allocated some of the funds for renovating the store, providing ample opportunity for workers to carry out the upgrades unnoticed. I devised a plan involving an electrician, discreetly slipping a camera and recording device into one of the can lights above the break room couch on a Monday morning, removing it 2 days later. Confident that I was mentally prepared, I settled in my office with a drink and snacks to review the footage objectively, akin to watching a movie. Yet, witnessing my wife engage intimately with another man proved far more devastating than I anticipated. By the end of the tape, I was incapacitated, having consumed copious amounts of scotch, wreaked havoc in my office, and succumbed to illness. The footage depicted what I had suspected, though experiencing it firsthand was harrowing. Skipping to early afternoon on Tuesday, I observed a woman, unmistakably Olivia, enter the room carrying a bag containing fresh sheets and a bottle of wine. After changing the linens, she disrobed and awaited Bruce's arrival, clad in lingerie reminiscent of a provocative performance I had once witnessed. When Bruce entered, Olivia greeted him warmly, their interaction hinting at an established routine. They engaged in intimate acts with familiarity, each gesture implying a shared understanding of their desires. Though their routine differed from my experiences with Olivia, it was evident that this was their accustomed dynamic, characterized by unspoken anticipation of each other's actions. The intercourse was as uneventful as the oral activity that preceded it. Bruce maintained a relentless, monotonous rhythm, which I would have deemed mundane under different circumstances if not for the overwhelming sense of outrage I felt. Around the 10-minute mark, Bruce reached climax, and I surmised Olivia did as well, judging by her sudden relaxation and expression of pleasure. They remained in a quiet embrace for a moment before Bruce rolled onto his side, initiating a bout of tender kisses. By the time their encounter concluded, I was seething with hurt and fury, my breaths heavier than theirs. I knew that the images I had witnessed were etched into my mind as an irreversible scar, rendering forgiveness impossible for the adulterous pair. I was grateful to have a plan to terminate, rather than salvage, my marriage. As I moved to switch off the video, their conversation caught my attention. Olivia reclined on her side, idly tracing patterns on Bruce's chest, while they engaged in intimate dialogue. Olivia expressed discontentment with their choice of venue for their liaisons, lamenting the necessity of using the furniture store as their rendezvous spot. Bruce offered a rationale, citing the risks associated with using hotels or their respective homes. Olivia wistfully wished for an alternative, expressing reluctance toward changing soiled sheets before their encounters. Bruce, in a moment of contemplation, queried Olivia about any regrets regarding her marriage to me. Olivia dismissed the notion, affirming the uniqueness of their relationship while acknowledging her love for me and Bruce's love for his wife. She emphasized our monogamous natures, suggesting that our capacity for love was inherently limited compared to theirs. Hearing Olivia justify her infidelity as a virtuous act fueled my outrage to its peak, culminating in the violent act of hurling a paperweight through my office door. Despite my love for her and her apparent affection for me, I was blindsided by her arrogance and self-serving rationalization of her betrayal. In her distorted worldview, cheating was not a breach of marital trust but a noble endeavor to spread love, a notion I found utterly repugnant. I spent the night on the office couch and completed all the necessary paperwork the following morning. When I returned home the next evening, Olivia confronted me with hands on her hips and a displeased expression. "Where were you last night?" I was worried sick. No calls, no texts, no explanation. She began, her tone a mix of concern and annoyance. I raised a hand to stop her. "I was at work. I got drunk and couldn't drive home, so I stayed there," I explained. Her expression shifted to confusion. "Drunk at work?" I nodded, then made my way to the living room, settling on the couch with my briefcase. Olivia followed, taking a seat across from me. "What's going on, Mike?" she demanded. I sorted through my briefcase, laying out folders on the couch beside me. "Just give me a moment to organize this," I said, focusing on the paperwork. "Can you at least tell me what happened last night?" Olivia pressed, her tone softening slightly. "I watched the video," I replied calmly. "A feed of you and Bruce in his break room. It was disturbing, so I had a few too many drinks." A range of emotions flashed across Olivia's face: confusion, distress, shock. "What? I don't understand, Mike. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice trembling. "Come on, Olivia. You can't be oblivious to this. I'm referring to you and Bruce, to what happened yesterday, and every other damn Tuesday for at least a year," I stated, motioning to the paperwork. "I'm talking about the end of our marriage." Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. I waited for a response. "Mike, we can fix this. I can make you see." She began, her voice faltering. "I think I understand, Liv," I interrupted, pulling out a DVD and sliding it toward her. "I gathered plenty of information last night. A treasure trove of revelations about my loving wife and my friendly brother-in-law." She recoiled at the sight of the DVD, refusing to touch it. "Take it, Liv. That's your copy. I won't reveal how I acquired it, but I have my own for future reference and enlightenment about your views on love and commitment." As she moved to stand, I raised a hand, halting her. She sat back down, biting her lip nervously before speaking again, her voice tinged with false confidence. "Mike, you need to consider this with an open mind. It's nonsensical to destroy our lives over differing values and abilities. I love you and I've always been willing to adapt to our differences," she pleaded. I snorted derisively. "Different values and abilities? Cheating on your husband isn't a talent, Liv. Anyone can do that." "Talent isn't the right word," she corrected, taking a deep breath. "It's capacity. I have a capacity for love and have successfully loved multiple people romantically. There's no reason I can't exercise my capacity." "Stop it. You're justifying cheating with empty excuses," I interjected. "Having romantic relationships with multiple people doesn't make you special. It makes you unfaithful." With that, the remorseful Olivia vanished, replaced by an assertive, defensive figure. "You accuse me of being a cheater?" She spat the words at me. "Fair enough, I suppose, from your perspective. But let's be clear, I've never denied my love for you or for Bruce. I've never cheated on my emotions, never compromised my feelings or actions because of some outdated notion that I must confine myself to one person. So yes, maybe in your eyes I'm a cheater, but when I look in the mirror, I have no regrets, no qualms about my choices." She spoke with fervor, her face flushed, eyes blazing with defiance. "So," I challenged her, "you want an open relationship, loving different men on different days? Fine. But don't pretend you haven't cheated, haven't been deceitful. You never once hinted to me that you were sleeping with Bruce, knowing full well I wouldn't have agreed to that." She avoided my gaze, but I persisted. "You chose to lie by omission, deceiving me and everyone else into thinking we were exclusive. You lived a lie, and regardless of your marital philosophy, that makes you a cheater." Tears welled in her eyes, anger contorting her expression, but she remained silent, unable to articulate a response. I slid the paperwork toward her. Read it. Get a lawyer. It's fair. Finally, she spoke. And if I don't want a divorce? Then you're out of luck, Liv, because you're getting one, I retorted, a smirk tugging at my lips. But don't worry, you won't be alone. That night, I moved out, seeking solace in work and distancing myself from the pain of my failed marriage. Despite expectations of a fierce negotiation, I offered Olivia a generous lump sum for a swift divorce, threatening to withdraw the offer if she resisted. Deep down, I suppose I hoped for a different outcome. I wanted her to fight for our marriage, to prioritize our relationship over money. But it became clear that wasn't her priority. Despite some feeble objections, she agreed to the terms, and within 60 days, our marriage was legally dissolved. A couple of months after the divorce, Bruce began defaulting on his payments, as expected. Despite warnings and stern letters, he pleaded for more time to pay. I instructed Bernie to be firm, knowing Bruce was running out of options. When Bruce requested a personal meeting, I knew he was desperate. I wanted Olivia to foot the bill. So, when she entered my office with him, looking radiant, I suppressed my emotions. Bruce attempted to charm me, but I remained stoic, uninterested in rekindling any friendship. I shut down his attempts at reconciliation without a hint of emotion. Bruce, let's cut to the chase. Your apologies mean nothing to me. He recoiled as if my words had physically struck him, then composed himself with a deep breath before continuing. Sorry, Mike. Let's talk business. He looked to me for guidance, but I gestured for him to proceed. Nervously, he rambled about his intentions to repay the money, Bernie's pressure tactics, and the potential for business recovery. He then made a case for an extension, trying to appeal to my financial interests. I leaned back, studying Bruce's demeanor closely, his nervous smile, the sweat on his forehead, and his trembling hand. Bruce, if you were trustworthy, I might consider it. His expression shifted to surprise and distress as he leaned forward to object, but I cut him off. Let's be real here. It's hard to trust someone who had no qualms about sleeping with his sister-in-law. Asking her husband for a financial favor is just absurd. Bruce squirmed uncomfortably, while Olivia tried to interject. Mike, please, don't punish Bruce because I'll do as I please, Olivia, I snapped, glaring at her. And why are you even here? She faltered, explaining she hoped to appeal to our history, but I shut her down, insisting she remain silent. Turning back to Bruce, I laid out my terms clearly, repayment on schedule or I'd start seizing collateral assets. Bruce shook his head vehemently. Mike, you can't destroy my business. You can't. I can and I will if you don't pay up, Bruce. My suggestion, find the money. Seek help from your family, try the banks, sell assets, whatever it takes. If not, I'll take what I can. But the banks won't lend to me, and my family, they can't help. They don't have that kind of cash. I met Bruce's gaze firmly. Don't feed me that. I know they do. No, they really don't. They would if they could, but... What about her? I nodded towards Olivia. Have you asked her for money? Bruce leaned back. Liv? She doesn't have. I chuckled. Sure she does. I cut her a check for $150,000. She's sitting on plenty. Isn't that right, Olivia? I glanced at Olivia with a smirk, while Bruce turned to her with a puzzled expression. Clearly, he was unaware of the lump sum payout. She seemed suddenly uneasy, perhaps a bit queasy. Well, yes, I do, but I need that money. I chuckled again. Hold on there, Liv. I recall how safe you thought it was to invest in Bruce's business when you persuaded me to help in the first place. Why hesitate now? If you believe in Bruce's ability to turn things around, why not pitch in? She swallowed hard, exchanged a glance with Bruce, then returned her gaze to me. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her posture and, with a hint of defiance, stated that she could cover the shortfall for a while. Bruce smiled at her, and she weakly returned the smile as they left, Bruce walking with newfound confidence and Olivia with a deflated demeanor. As I held the door open, I issued one final reminder. Remember, Bruce, I don't care how. Just get me the money. You'll have it, he shot back. Olivia looked anxious. In the following months, I immersed myself in work, avoiding personal conversations and social interactions. Despite my efforts to push thoughts of my wife's betrayal away, reminders of her were everywhere, including the monthly check from Bruce that landed on my desk. The sight brought a bitter satisfaction, a sense that I'd managed to drag the architects of my misery down with me, if only a little. The situation took a turn for the worse when Mindy reached out to me. She sent a couple of emails and even called me. I was surprised to learn that Bruce and Olivia had confessed to her, likely with a softened version of their affair, and that she had initially struggled with it but eventually forgave them both. To my dismay, she hinted that she had suspected their relationship and that they had some sort of arrangement allowing Bruce and Olivia to continue seeing each other. She even made a feeble attempt to persuade me to reconsider taking Olivia back. My responses to her were bitter and curt, and I'm fairly certain I left her in tears after our second call. After that, I didn't hear from her again. Mindy's apparent acceptance showed me that Bruce and Olivia were paying a lower emotional toll than I had hoped. My greatest fear now was that somehow they would resolve their financial issues, Bruce would repay his debts to Olivia, and they would all find contentment while leaving me behind, unable to grasp what they saw as modern love. I needn't have worried. The furniture store burned down 9 months after my meeting with Bruce and Olivia. It was a spectacular fire, requiring a 2-alarm response and making headlines on the nightly news. I hadn't seen the report, but Bernie had, and he called me immediately to discuss the implications. He was furious with me for taking on the risk, convinced that the trust had lost a significant amount of money. I placated him by promising to personally buy out the liability of the loan if it defaulted, and assured him that the properties had value due to their location. The fire raised suspicions, and when accelerants were found, the insurance company hesitated to pay out. With no income from the store, Bruce defaulted on the loan completely, leaving me with a charred lot and 35 acres of hunting land along the Mississippi. The criminal investigation lasted nearly 6 months. The detectives built a circumstantial case against Bruce and Olivia, showing that the store was losing money and Olivia was injecting increasing amounts of cash to keep it afloat. Bruce had tried unsuccessfully to secure loans elsewhere before attempting to sell the business at a discounted rate, to no avail. While investigators couldn't prove Bruce and Olivia's involvement in starting the fire, they theorized they had hired someone to do it. They found searches related to arson on Olivia's computer, phone records indicating contact with individuals with arson convictions, and noted she had withdrawn a significant amount of cash a week before the fire. Olivia and Bruce had managed to secure competent legal representation, likely with whatever funds Olivia had left. The district attorney anticipated a tough battle ahead, so negotiations began. Initially facing first-degree arson and fraud charges, they bargained down from there. The defense insisted on nothing less than fourth-degree arson, setting the stage for a standoff until a court date was set. I found myself on the witness list, waiting in the courthouse foyer on what was supposed to be the trial's first day. Sitting on a hard bench, I idly flipped through the newspaper, tapping my foot on the tiled floor. A court official emerged to announce the trial's cancellation. A deal had been struck, and we could all go home. As I gathered my belongings, Olivia and Bruce passed by, flanked by officers and their lawyer. Reporters clamored for comments, but they remained silent, deferring to their attorney. Bruce joined Mindy and left with officers, while Olivia, without hesitation, approached me. I couldn't help but admire her courage in facing me under such circumstances. "Well, Mike, is this what you wanted? To see me punished for my mistakes?" she asked. I chuckled bitterly and shook my head. I wanted a faithful wife and a successful marriage. But in the absence of that, I simply wanted what was rightfully mine. "You won't be getting any of that now, will you?" she retorted. "Oh, I've recouped some of it, and I've acquired the store," I replied. She laughed. "And what will you do with that? Has the smoke cleared yet? You'd be surprised what a skilled businessman can do with a valuable property, even a charred one." Her expression hardened slightly. "Are you happier now? Alone?" Immersed in your work? I'm adjusting, Liv. I loved you, but there are other women out there, I said. She smiled knowingly. I doubt you'll find an equivalent replacement. Whether you admit it or not, you'll miss me. Leaning closer, I whispered, I may feel lonely at times, but you won't, will you? You'll be surrounded by like-minded individuals to share your abundant love with. It's a win-win for you and your new companions. My last remark seemed to strike a nerve as Olivia erupted in anger, hurling insults at me as officers led her away, her face contorted with contempt and fury. As Olivia unleashed her fury, it became painfully clear that any love she once held for me had vanished, replaced by a contemptuous hatred. Despite the wave of sadness that washed over me, I resisted the urge to show my pain, offering only a thin smile and a half-hearted comment about her choice of language. But her tirade continued unabated, as if my words hadn't registered. But soon enough, I'll be free from my prison, moving forward, while you remain alone, longing for me. And years from now, when you're settled with some dull ex-secretary, you'll still wish you had just accepted. Her words were abruptly cut off as the door closed behind her, ending her rant. I turned and left the courtroom. With the trial canceled, my schedule for the afternoon cleared, leaving me with a growing sense of gloom and solitude. I made my way to the burned-out lot, grappling with my thoughts about the wreckage and my life. As the biting wind whipped against me, I pondered my options. Selling the lot and moving on seemed like the safest choice, the path of least resistance. But another idea took hold, rebuilding, perhaps even opening another furniture store. The thought of succeeding where Bruce had failed, of rubbing it in his and Olivia's faces, intrigued me. I realized that the decisions I faced about the lot mirrored those about my life in general. Olivia had been right about me. I was comfortable with solitude, inclined to prioritize work over intimate relationships. I found myself torn between familiarity and change, between safety and risk. Seated on a concrete block, I weighed my options, contemplating my future. Just as I was about to leave, a burst of sunlight illuminated a nearby graffiti-covered wall, casting a warm, encouraging glow on the words painted in bold white letters. Go for it. Despite my usual skepticism towards superstition, the words on the graffiti wall felt like a divine message as I sat on the cold concrete slab in the November chill. They stirred a sense of destiny within me. I dialed my assistant's number, Sherry, and she picked up on the other end. Hey, Sherry, do you remember the architecture firm behind that new mall with all the glass and fountains? I think it's Hammer something, she replied, humming as she checked. Yep, Hammerstone. They're based here in Chicago. Great, can you schedule a meeting with them as soon as possible? Sherry hesitated. Are we building something? I envisioned the new store on the lot and felt a sudden surge of confidence. Yes, I believe we are. Okay, boss. Anything else? Sherry's tone sounded increasingly puzzled, and I wondered if she suspected I was losing my mind. I glanced again at the graffiti, reaffirming my decision to go for it. Yes, one more thing, Sherry. Remember Brenda, the rep for the knockoff jeans? Brenda White? Yes. Sherry's voice held a note of disbelief, and I suspected she was questioning my sanity. Could you give me her number? Sure thing, boss. Do you want me to connect you? No, I'll make the call myself. Thanks. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.